Hi there, this is Angela, and welcome back to Strategize This and another unprofessional, poorly edited video about topics that I care about. This video is part of a video series on getting started in overlanding. And if you have not watched the first video yet, called Let's Get Started, you might want to go back and review that or watch that introduction video. It'll give you a quick overview on what I'm doing here, how I'm doing it, why I'm doing it, and just some caveats of my experience. I've also created a playlist for all of these videos so that you can go and look at them in order. So, excuse me, I'm a little bit hoarse tonight. So hopefully I'll be able to get through this video without sounding too bad. Also, I'm here at the office at night. It's a very cold night in January, and I also have that nasty light on behind me, so I'm going to try to block it with my head. I look like I have a halo. But I'm kind of waiting for the snow to come in. So if you see me keep looking out the window, that's what I'm doing. So if you're new to the channel, welcome. There are some things you need to know about this channel. The first one is that this channel is not monetized because I already have 2 full-time jobs, and I don't want to destroy my hobby by trying to make money off of it. I don't have a production team. I'm not looking for a production team. So my videos are in the raw, off the cuff, and you just kind of get what you get. I try to do some limited editing, but I'm nowhere at a professional level. Do not consider me your sole source of information. I've been doing this for about 3 years, but I still consider myself somewhat of a rookie. There's certainly a lot of people out there that are much more experienced than I am, but I'm willing to share what I've learned thus far. You must subscribe to the channel in order to make and respond to comments. You may want to go ahead and subscribe to the channel and then come back and watch this video later, so that you can, enter your comments as you're watching them. We have a small community. I'm hoping those that have a good amount of experience going out camping for long periods of time will answer some of the or respond to some of your comments too, or answer some of your questions. Just don't get mad at me if I don't respond to you right away, or if there's a time delay. I'm just trying to get a lot of things done at one time, and so it can get delayed. So I'm hoping that we're going to be building, it's a small community on this channel, and hopefully we'll be building up a community where we're responding to each other. I just ask that if you are responding to somebody's comments, please indicate to them how much experience you have, and what type of rig you have, because that makes a lot of difference in how you frame your responses. Okay, so let's roll. In this video, like I said, this is the first one. We're going to look at the social and psychological impacts of overlanding, because they can be significant. This is a long form video, which means it's going to be greater than 20 minutes. So you're probably going to get some rambling from me, but I'm going to try really hard to stay on topic. And I do have a pretty good outline in my head of what I want to do. And so I hope to stay on topic. This video is going to possibly put a lot of doubt in your mind about whether you even want to get involved with this. And that's not what I'm trying to do. What I'm trying to do is get you to make some serious decisions, some critical decisions about this, so that you don't spend more money than you need to spend buying things that you're not going to need. And I wish that someone had had this conversation with me before I started overlanding. I'm pretty much I've got kind of a project manager type of mentality. And so I didn't get caught in that trap, but I can see where it would have been very easy for me to get caught in that trap of buying things that I didn't need, because there's a lot of cool gear out there, but depending on what your level of commitment is, it may not be equipment that you need to be buying. So I do recommend that you watch this video with your spouse or partner, or the people that are closest to you, because they may have some important information to contribute here. What I'm going to talk about here are the things that I wished others had told me about before I started pulling together my overlanding plan. So let's first of all talk about the geography of your social circle. And you look at that and you're like, oh my gosh, she's really getting granular here. But maybe you haven't thought about these things. Okay. So your geography has an impact on your social circle and how your social circle functions. When you're grounded and you're at a specific geographic point, all right, you experience life in a way that binds you to that geographic location. All right. It's like having a rudder in a boat. It kind of gives you stability, and it gives you, kind of a point of reference. Okay. And you know that you can head off in any direction from that point. You experience life in a way that binds you to a particular geographic location. Most of us, we're living in an apartment, we're living in a house, we're living in somewhere that binds us to an address. And you experience life from that perspective. You know stuff about certain people because you're geographically close to them. You are invited to certain things because you are in close proximity. It's like birthday parties, and, maybe you get together with neighbors and you watch NASCAR, or maybe you've got a group of friends that like a church family or something like that, or a sports team that you socialize with. These are all, you're allowed to have these, you have these relationships because you're geographically close. And there's also people in your life that you can help when they're in trouble, and they help you when you're in trouble. And you can be that to each other because of your close geography. There's also some things that you gain from becoming a geographic anchor, let's say. You have a particular perspective of the world from, how you interact with your neighbors and your church family and even your routine. So you're like, well, how does my routine give me a perspective? Well, think about this. Let's say that you live 8 miles from work, and because you only live 8 miles from work, you get up at a certain time. You eat something probably fairly habitual, like most people, for breakfast. You'll either have time to get a cup of coffee or you won't have time to get a cup of coffee. You're going to take the same route to work every day. You understand the traffic patterns. You know where the traffic backs up. You have a routine that's based upon your geography, and the decisions that you make. Even what time you leave your house in the morning is dictated by your geography. There's also a certain amount of comfort that comes from knowing an area. You have a certain amount of familiarity. You know how to get things done, where to go for things. You know that if you need to explain where you are, you know the area well. You know what products are available. You know what services are available. You know how long it takes you to get things done. There's a lot of things in terms of comfort that you get from being locked into a particular geographic area. Geographic area dictates how you get your mail and your Amazon packages. Also, being tied to a geographic area, is the foundation for your medical insurance, and even like your support networks and stuff like that. So your children and your extended family members, sometimes they interact with you because of your geography. Okay, for example, let's say that you have a niece or a granddaughter or a grandson that just stops by when he's in the area. Okay. Um, because you're there geographically, you get to interact with that part of your social group. So you may even share some obligations and responsibilities and bear some of the burdens associated with being in that geographic area because of what's going on. Maybe there's a neighbor that you help, or maybe there's a sick family member that you look after. So all of this kind of rolls into where you are geographically. It's a lot to think about, but thinking about it early will help you avoid wasting a lot of money. Okay. So, and I'm not saying you can't go. We're going to get to that point where you're like, okay, this will work for me. All right. So don't get discouraged this early in the first video. Okay. Um, so you have the potential of losing connections when you pull out of your geographic area, or that the quality of your relationships might drop a little bit. But you're going to gain these incredible experiences that they're going to miss out on. They're not going to see. So you're going to have plenty of stuff to share with them, and they're going to welcome that and enjoy looking at, your experiences in the world. And you'll also be kind of gaining a new way of life. So this lifestyle might have some negative or positive impacts on your children, depending on what their ages are and their stage of social development. I know I've run into a couple of families that are traveling together full time. And one woman that I had an opportunity to talk to, she had two boys, and they were probably like 8 and 10, that kind of age. And she had them on a routine. I mean, they had like a little tent gazebo, and every morning she got up and they had breakfast, and then they sat down and they did their schoolwork for a few hours, and then they went on a hike, and then they came back and they finished up their day. And they were on a very strict routine. And I had an opportunity to talk to her about that. And she said, my kids really do well. They seem to be, very happy. She said, but I'm really worried about, they don't have a best friend. They don't have sports that they participate in. They don't have, spend the night parties with their friends and things like that. They don't go to their friends' birthday parties. And, she was expressing concern about that, and that she and her husband were thinking about kind of getting geographically locked into an area and picking a space where they could at least have a normal middle school and high school life, and make friends and expand their social circles. So that she was a little concerned about that. And then I met another couple that had a couple of kids that were a little bit younger, like 4 and 5, and they had already made a decision that they were going to stop overlanding so that they could get their kids in a proper school. It was just important to them. They decided that after they had their second kid, they were going to get this out of their system, and they were going to travel all over the United States, and then they were going to go back home and get their kids enrolled and get them stabilized. And then I had these two people that I was running into at a campground that I stayed at in Missouri, and their kids hate camping. So their kids during the summer stay with their grandparents, and their grandparents are, their kids are teenagers. They just don't want to go with their parents anymore, gallivant around the country. So they stay with their grandparents, and then they can stay in contact with, one of them has a girlfriend, and the other one likes to play sports, and so they stay at their grandparents' house, and that works out fine for them. And they said, but they went with us for a few years, and then they didn't want to go anymore. So the parents continued to go out, and the grandparents welcomed the opportunity of having their grandchildren at the house with them during the summer. So it worked out for them. But it's something to think about. And then, the other thing is that if you make a determination that you can only go out like during the holidays or something like that, then you're not really ever going to be home for the holidays to participate in those festivities with your family. So for some people, that's great. And for some people, it's a real problem. So, you know, I worry about that you're going to think that I'm somehow discouraging you. I'm not trying to discourage you. You can manage all of this, and we're going to talk about managing this. Um, but it's good that you start thinking. I mean, the whole purpose of these videos have been requested by you, okay? People that I've met when I've been out traveling, and I've heard from some of you via text message that these are the kind of videos that you would like to see me do. So, it sounds like I'm being negative. Um, I'm just trying to get you to start thinking about the realities so that you can make better decisions, because you're going to have an incredible experience no matter how little you go out or how much you go out. You can create just some absolutely fantastic experiences. But you really need to think about just how deep you're going to get into this. So this creates kind of a sense of responsibility on your side that you need to be realistic about. Like, how much time are you going to go out at one time? Like, what is one outing going to look like for you? Is it just going to be weekends? Or is it going to be, you could go out to a couple of weeks at a time and you're going to go out 3 or 4 times a year? Or um, are you going to like spend the whole summers wandering around? So, and then which leads me to the time of year. Every season has its good points and its bad points. Like, it's good things that make it easy, and then its challenges. So you need to think about what season you would prefer. A lot of people either camp in spring or fall because, really, as far as climate goes, those are the two seasons that are the easiest to manage. But there's some advantages of the other seasons as well. You want to kind of start thinking about how you're going to make accommodations and preparations for your absence. Um, for instance, in my case, when I leave for several months, there's no one here to mow the lawn. So I have to have like a lawn mowing service and a company that comes out and takes care of my flower beds and stuff like that, because I'm not going to be here to do it. So that's something that I'm responsible for, that I got to figure out how I'm going to pay for. Then the next thing is, if you find that you're going to be more available in one season than another, then that's the kind of equipment that you're going to start looking at, because sometimes, depending on the season, the equipment can be very, very different. So, and that's going to impact not just your equipment, but your clothing that you're going to buy, and your skills, and the skills you're going to acquire, and your practices, like how you get things done. So that's the kind of stuff that you get from your geographic references. Okay. Um, so the other thing, kind of staying in this whole thing about the social contract or the social consequences. One thing that I found out, and if you're one of my friends, don't think that I am talking crap about you, because I'm not. I was a little bit disappointed that none of my friends wanted to do this with me. This was something that I found that was an adventure, and I was excited about doing it. And when I talked to my circle of friends, I learned really quickly that nobody in my family or friends wanted to do this with me. They made joking comments like, I'm not interested in camping in any campground unless it has, a TV, a weight room, and room service, meaning they wanted to be in a hotel. I've got maybe one or two friends that are willing to kind of like come out to the campsite with me wherever I'm staying, and then like sit around the campfire for a while, but they want to go back to their hotel. Or some places you go, there's a combination of like off-road places that you can camp, and then there's lodges nearby. They want to be in the lodge. So it definitely, when you decide to do something like this, you need to talk to your circle of friends and find out what their level of interest is. They also may not have the financial resources to do this, or they may have more financial resources than you. All right. Um, so this is your thing. This isn't their thing. And they may not be on board for going out for months at a time, or they may want to go out for months and you only want to go out for a couple of weeks. So, everybody's kind of got to figure out what their level of involvement's going to be. But in my circle of friends, none of my friends were going to do this for me. I mean, do this with me. So we're going to deal with that situation too, because that's a great opportunity, believe it or not. So you just have to expand your social circle and start finding the people that like to do what you do. And we're going to talk about that. So what can you do about this? First of all, talk to people and find out what their level of interest is. You might have a friend or two that want to give it a try. But don't get your feelings hurt and everything if everybody in your social circle doesn't want to do this. There's plenty of people out there that do this, and you'll meet plenty of people. You need to think about who serves as your emergency contact, because they may not be much help to you if you're in the mountains of Kentucky. Okay. So, and don't forget that the emergency contact you have when you leave needs to be someone who can fly out to you and possibly drive your rig back home. So it's a different type of emergency contact. Okay. You also need to kind of work on getting a routine started for yourself when you leave to go camping, especially if you're going out for long periods of time like I do, because in the course of my day, I have to develop a routine that allows me to break camp in the morning, travel for a little bit, do my work. I work when I'm on the road, then set camp, fix dinner, have a good night's sleep, and then get up the next morning and do the whole thing again. So it can be very stressful, and it's kind of a fast-paced thing that you have to do, given that you might not be that familiar with an area. So you want to learn how to manage your routines and things like that. So it's going to be your responsibility to stay in contact with people. Your friends are not going to just stand there frozen in time while you're out gallivanting around and seeing all these new sites. So, we have texting that we can do. We can send pictures. We can stay in contact with them. But nothing replaces you initiating the contact and calling your friends once every couple of weeks, maybe once every 3 weeks, whatever's normal for your circle of friends. And you find out what they are doing, because you're going to have this adventure that you're always going to be talking about, and they're going to be living their lives back home. And so if you want to maintain the quality of those relationships, then you need to stay engaged, call them, listen to them, and kind of think about, what they're going through, and keep up with them. And I'm not saying their lives are miserable. They may be really busy and have some really cool stuff going on, but you go out and you never call them, so you don't know. So then when you come back home, you don't know what's going on with everybody, and that can be really, really uncomfortable. So now let's talk about the realities of being alone. And I'm not talking about being alone for a weekend, like you need a quiet day or something like that. I'm talking about you being alone for days, weeks, months. Okay. When you're alone for that long a period of time, you kind of give yourself permission sometimes to be lazy. And so, even if you're by yourself, you need to hold yourself to a high standard, because you don't want to fall in that trap. I have like 3 or 4 different routines that I have. I have a different routine for when I'm driving. I have a day where I'm going to be driving a lot. Then I have another routine for when I'm staying put. I have a routine. I have a weekend routine. And so I have, different routines that I use interchangeably when I'm out there. You need to have a plan for protecting yourself. I mean, you're out there by yourself. You're alone. Okay. So you need to have a plan for protecting yourself. And I'm not going to go into a lot of that right now, because it's none of anybody's business how I protect myself on the road. But um, you need to be able to protect yourself not only from animals, but for people. And you want to have lethal and non-lethal options. And you want to have options that you can handle under stress and when you're afraid, because you get that adrenaline dump. You're by yourself. You've got to make sure that you can handle whatever you're using to protect yourself. And then I think it's a good idea to also pick what I call a field hobby. And most people have this. You'll see them even if you're just going to be RVing and staying in campgrounds. You'll notice people have this. So I call it a field hobby, and this is something that you can work on when you're on the road. Um, so believe it or not, the first summer that I went out, I had two in my back seat. I had these two massive boxes of paperwork, old paperwork that I needed to go through. And so, you know, I would go through those papers and I would divide the papers up between what I was going to mail back home and what I was going to go take to an Office Max and get shredded or whatever. And so for the first 3 weeks I was out, I was just going through papers. When I was at the end of the day, I would go through a few papers. Um, but I don't really consider that a field hobby. That was just a crime of opportunity for me to clean up something that I needed to clean up. But when I think about a field hobby, um, some people like to knit. Some people play cards, um, especially if they're in part of a caravan, and everybody likes to play cards, or everybody likes to play board games. Um, um, I keep a camping journal. So I'll do that. Um, I do these videos, of course, when I'm out. Um, but and I have these little mini board games. I don't have one to show you, but you can see them on Amazon. They're like anywhere from like $7 to $20 a piece, and it's like a little operation game. There, if y'all are familiar with the game Operation, there one is like a little mini Sorry board, and I have all these different games, a little battleship game and a little light bright, and play around and do another image on my light bright with the little light up pegs. Um, so those are the kind of things that I do when I'm just sitting around. But I will warn you, you're driving all day, and then you have a field hobby that allows you to sit around. You could be sitting too much, and it's really easy to start putting on weight or falling out of shape under those circumstances, because you're sitting all the time. And I know just as many people who are extremely active, and no matter where they're camping, they get up every morning and they go for a long walk, or they go for walks with friends in the middle of the day. So you just have to pay attention to what you're doing there. Um, and then the final thing that I'll talk about as far as being alone is that you may find that you're like really irritated when you find that you're around people again, especially if you're going from isolation to back into a high population area. Um, because you have to like reacclimate to the traffic. You'll start noticing things about people that didn't annoy you before, but now it does, like people being pushy and stuff like that. East Coast people are, I didn't realize how pushy East Coast people were until I spent some time in some of the other parts of the country. Um, and so I've always been on the East Coast, so it seems normal to me. But I did notice when I came back to the East Coast, I was like, gosh, we're rough. I actually saw my home in a different way. Um, so the next item, keep this moving, acknowledging that this is high risk behavior. This doesn't mean you're going to die, okay? But it does mean that you need to be prepared for the unforeseeable, like illnesses and injuries and vehicle breakdowns, getting lost. And I'm not talking about getting lost like you can't get a GPS signal, okay? I'm talking about you're lost. You don't have a GPS. You don't have a phone signal, and you are off your route and you have no idea where you're at. If you know how to like read your direction by the position of the sun and stuff like that, if you have that skill set, then you'll work your way out of it. But that's something that people a lot of times don't realize just how lost you can get when you start going out. Um, and, going back to what we were talking about being alone, you're going to encounter dangerous situations sometimes, dangerous animals and things like that. So usually if you make the right decision and you get yourself informed before you go into these areas, you're fine. I've only had one incident with an animal that it actually scared me. And you know, it turned out being okay, but it was scary and I did have to report it to the forest ranger. So um and also you could develop health issues while you're out there. So that's also important. So again, I'm not trying to discourage you from doing this. I'm just saying, let's go about this the right way. I don't want to be remiss and say, oh, you can do all of these things, and then you spend all of this money, and then you find out, I really overspent on this. Um, so when you meet people on the road, first of all, 99% of them are wonderful, fun people. I have people stop me all the time and they're like, "Hey, I haven't seen a Project M for real, only on YouTube. Can you show me your Project M?" And I'll do that. And I love doing that. And some of you who I've hung out with, you have actually been with me when people have walked up to the truck and said, "Hey, can I see your Project M?" I mean, so you know that this kind of stuff happens. And most of the people are fantastic people with amazing stories. But in the mix of overlanders, there are also some unscrupulous people, like there is in any group. So don't be naive, okay? Um, you can also start to develop a sense of when something's not right. Like I've encountered people that I thought were full-time overlanders, but it turned out that they were actually homeless and they were living in their vehicles. So that's a little bit different. It doesn't mean they're horrible people. It just means their circumstances are different. But their reactions to things, and how they feel about their sense of privacy and their space, may be different from what you normally encounter. Um, some people spend a lot of time by themselves, and then when they get around other people, they won't shut up. Uh, you've got to like try to figure out a way to get away from them. And sometimes you will be talking too much because you've spent so much time in isolation. Um, so might be a good idea if you want to create a virtual phone number, um, or maybe a virtual or an extra email address that's not tied to you publicly in any way, so that you can share it and stay in contact with people that you meet on the road. Haven't really had a problem with it. But just remember, you're meeting these people on the road, and in your travels, you don't know these people. And so don't be naive. Make sure that you're paying attention, that, you have to make sure that you're not um, presuming that everybody you meet is going to be your friend. It may or may not be true. Um, and you need to be vigilant about not looking vulnerable, not looking lost, or looking like you're in distress, because sometimes that can make you a target. And, we'll talk all about this later. All right. And then I guess the last thing we should talk about is just the physical demands of doing this. Um, I am not in good shape. I wouldn't say I'm a strong woman, but I'm not in good shape. I'm carrying on extra weight, and I'm older, and but I will tell you, I know ladies that are in their 80s who are also overlanders. I've seen people in their 80s driving Class A's, and pulling a dinghy, an extra vehicle behind their Class A. So you don't have to be a bodybuilder or some sort of health guru to do this. But, there's a lot of walking and lifting equipment and breaking down camp and setting up camp and emptying tanks and climbing up on things. And in my case, have to climb up and down every time I want to get in and out of bed. So there's that. So, if you have joint problems, I'm going to keep that in mind when you're making your decisions. Um, you want to walk a lot to stay ready to go. And then when you're out in the field, which is what I call it when I leave home, when I'm out in the field, kind of stay on some sort of physical, activity routine, even if it's just going for a short walk a couple of times a day, just to keep yourself um, kind of ready to respond to the demands of the day, because just about everything you're going to do is going to be a manual process. So you need to be ready for that. And also, eating on the road can wreak havoc on your body and your sleep and your sense of well being. And so, when we start talking about actually getting on the road, we'll talk about how to prepare your food, how to store your food, how to decide what you're going to take and what you're not going to take. We'll have a video on that too. Just don't take that for granted. So now we're going to wrap it up. Okay. Um, so I'm not trying to discourage you in this video. What I'm trying to do is give you things to think about. I'm going to go ahead and do the next video, which is going to be about the different ways that you can start overlanding, and I'll share with you how I did it. So don't get discouraged. This is just, anytime you take on a new hobby, you have to make some sort of decisions. So I want to recommend that you think about the following list, all right? So that you can have an idea of how much money you're probably going to have to spend when we start talking about that. Like, how long are you going to be gone? Like, really, how long can you be gone? Can you be gone 4 or 5 months like I am, or are you limited to a smaller window? Is it better for you to go out for a week or two at a time? Can you go out for a few months? Do you want to build up? Start doing smaller trips and then build up to going out for several months, which is what I would recommend. What does your spouse or partner think about this? And are they going to go with you, or are they going to be at home? And if you have kids, are they going to go, or are they going to be at home? Or what kind of impact is this going to have on them? In terms of people, who depends on you? Who do you depend on? What are you going to do for an emergency contact? If there are certain people in your life that are accustomed to depending on you because you do all the cooking, or you take care of the yard, or you provide regular babysitting for somebody, or you provide moral support to someone who struggles. Are you part of a sports team that these are all kind of arrangements that you need to take care of before you go out for an extended period of time. Who's going to check your mail and advise you of what's going on in your mailbox? Another thing to think about: what time of year are you going to go out? Do you want to mostly go out in the summers? Are you going to be a winter camper? What are you going to do? Who can you find that's going to be able to help you in an emergency, which includes possibly driving your rig back home? That's important. And, how good are you by yourself? Can you go into a town you've never been into before, walk into a restaurant, sit down at a table by yourself, and feel completely comfortable eating by yourself? I can do it, no problem. I don't give it a second thought, but I have heard where other people have told me they struggle with that. You know, and then what do you have right now that you can defend yourself with, and what should be your strategy going forward on that? And do you have a field hobby, or do you want a field hobby? And then, of course, your medical limitations. You want to take those into consideration too. And if you feel like you're not in shape for it, then maybe that would be motivation for you to start getting in shape to get ready to do something like this. So that's kind of like my 10 top areas of focus initially. So you might not be able to answer all the questions right now, but keep them in your mind. It'll all come together. And so the next video will not be from my office. It'll be from somewhere outside. It's going to be cold, but I'm going to do it. And we're going to start looking at kind of what some of your options are in doing this. And if you have been an avid hiker or a member of the military or even a camper before that wasn't overlanding but was doing it a different way, um, you know, you might already know what you like and don't like as far as being outside all the time. Um, but we're gonna kind of look at some of the pros and cons of different things in the next video. Don't forget to post any questions or concerns that you have, and hopefully either myself or somebody from the community will also pitch in and give you a response as well. Um, and then we'll just kind of work through this kind of stuff together. So thank you so much for hanging out with me this evening. And the next video will be on looking at the overlanding options and other camping options as well. So take care.